Hi, everyone. Thank you, Richard, Mike, and the team at ASI. Andrea and I are excited to share our research results with you today. I'm President and CEO of Vividata, Canada's leading consumer and media measurement firm. Vividata is perhaps most well known for providing the Survey of the Canadian Consumer, or the SCC, our media and consumer study that surveys over 35,000 Canadians 12 months of the year against some 60,000 variables, including extensive demographics, full cross-media metrics, over 150 psychographic statements, retail, life events, leisure activities, and thousands of products and brands. Recently, we launched Metrica, our digital measurement panel, capturing the complete picture of digital device usage in Canada. Through passive metering technology installed on the devices of opted-in panelists, Metrica transforms the digital activities of Canadians into actionable behavioral insights. As you can imagine, a tremendous amount of data flows from the digital panel, so it's processed into streaming, shopping or e-commerce, social media, and app and website activities. An obvious and important next step was to fuse the SCC to the Metrica data, creating a valuable new product for media buyers and sellers, agencies, and advertisers. We engaged dataBreeders after a chance reunion for Andrea and I at an ASI print and digital event in Lisbon. I told Andrea I wanted this fusion to provide an unparalleled view into the use of specific websites and apps, e-commerce, products and services, attitudes and opinions, and other media, online and offline, for Vividata's members. Of course, we had big ambitions for this fusion, so a set of objectives and constraints for the final fusion product were assembled. First, we needed a static fusion that could be used widely in commercial applications that our members were using, such as IMS and Telmar. Second, we needed to maintain weighted marginals and internal correlations of the SCC data, so that is, the fused data had to produce exactly the same results as the SCC standalone dataset. There could be no change in the volumes and the profiles of the audiences produced by Metrica. We also needed the ability to produce additive and deduplicated metrics across a period of 28 days. And finally, there needed to be realistic correlation between claimed internet behaviors collected by the SCC and actual ones passively measured by Metrica. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Andrea to explain how his team achieved this. Andrea?
Thanks, Pat. We started, as is quite typical, by partitioning each dataset into separate groups based on a few demographics, often called critical variables. Based on exploratory analysis and discussion with Vividata, we chose for this purpose the 5 Canadian macroregions and the sex of the respondent. In practice, this ensures that recipients are always matched to donors of the same sex and from the same macroregion. However, we didn't do the same for age, education, social status, and so on, simply because we would create partitions with very few recipients and donors. In practice, we would end up matching recipients and donors based on demographics, with very little room for anything else. So we moved on to harmonize claimed and measured internet behavior. To do this, we grouped websites and apps into the same categories questioned by the SCC and rescaled the metrics appropriately. Now, could we simply apply a nearest neighbor technique, finding a donor whose behavior is the most similar to that of each recipient? Yes, but some donors would be matched to many recipients and others to none. Surely a constrained nearest neighbor would solve this issue, but typically this would initially produce love at first sight matches and in the end shotgun marriages, as colorfully described by others in the past. One fascinating alternative that would have solved these and other issues is the isotonic fusion technique. However, this technique is typically restrained to one matching dimension, and in no way we could compress the complexity of the internet behavior into a single dimension. This is why we developed and applied the multidimensional isotonic fusion technique that we are going to explain. We first create an appropriate number of matching dimensions, extracting the principal components with identical structure of the matching variables of the two datasets. Then, we align recipients across the first matching dimension as segments whose length represents the proportional weight of each recipient within their respective partition. We then split each partition into an appropriate number of subpartitions on both the recipient and the donor side. Whenever a segment lays across two or more subpartitions, an individual is split into two or more versions of them, whose new weights will sum up exactly to their original weight. Then we do the same for donors. This is a graphical representation of how each original partition is divided into subpartitions on both the recipient and donor sides. And this process is then repeated recursively on the dimension 2, 3, and so on. The last dimension instead will be used to match individual donors and recipients within each corresponding partition using a traditional isotonic fusion technique. In this case, we will align both recipients and donors side by side across the last matching dimension. Then, whenever a recipient intersects two or more donors, that recipient will be split into multiple new recipients, which will be matched to different donors, and vice versa. And that's basically it. Now we'll go into some more detail. It is to be noted that there is a basic difference between how nearest neighbor and multidimensional isotonic fusion work. With nearest neighbor, the overall distance between candidate recipients and donors is measured at once across all dimensions. A donor may be assigned to a recipient that is distant on one dimension, provided that it is very close on the others. With the multidimensional isotonic fusion instead, donor and recipient must lie within the same split on all dimensions. This is also why it is vital to work on summary dimensions and not on individual variables, and use a limited number of them. Actually, for this implementation, we also evaluated two alternatives: the direct multidimensional isotonic fusion, that in practice is what we presented, and a predictive multidimensional isotonic fusion, where the matching dimensions are created through a reduced rank regression, which means extracting linear combinations of a series of common variables, questioned in the same way in the two datasets, which best correlate with the target variables, i.e. claimed and/or measured behaviors. In the end, we chose the direct option, which provided better correlations, but it is to be said that the predictive version also works perfectly from a technical standpoint. Finally, beware the number of splits that you apply to each dimension, because it must be adapted to the size of the initial partition. Larger partitions may require a larger number of splits, but smaller partitions definitely require a smaller number. This is to avoid that at some point, halfway, subpartitions may end up having a single donor or a single recipient, which means that the subsequent dimensions would have no effect at all. Pat?
What matters the most to both of us is the actual outcomes of the fusion and the feedback that we receive from our clients so far. I'm pleased to share with you that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. The fused data matches online to consumer habits, other media usage, psychographics, and attitudes. It maintains logical variations, allowing for deep segmentation, targeting, and rapid data manipulation using leading software tools that our members are already used to using. Here's some examples. Leading online banking and investment brand Wealthsimple, who caters to do-it-yourself low-fee trading. It's an excellent example here. Their profile skews young. The indices are at 35% over the average Canadian for using and accessing news apps. Wealthsimple visitors are financially overwhelmed and eager to learn. They want to know about supplemental income strategies and managing their finances. They underindex, as expected, and already having taken steps towards financial security at retirement, showing how well the variances work within the fused data. Looking at e-commerce in Canada, Amazon is by far the leader in Canada with just under 7 in 10 visits to the app or website in the past month. Other big-name retailers are a distant second, Walmart at 34% reach and Canada's own Canadian Tire at 33% reach. The Fusion projects to the Canadian population via the SCC, so we can see that over 8 million Canadians used the Amazon app in the past month, while the others have yet to even reach the 1 million threshold, as you can see in the visualization. Let's look at more digital app usage profiles from the Fusion. Canadian families prefer the Amazon app over the website, as you can see from the reach and indices, especially those with the younger children, perhaps from the convenience and mobile-heavy attitudes that these people have. App users above and below 35 years of age have a higher average household income than Amazon website user counterparts. Finally, we profiled all Amazon shoppers, broken out by app and website visitors, and under and over 35 years of age. We can see that the younger users skew visibly towards new media consumption, shown by the lighter yellow and blue lines, in monthly reach versus the older Amazon visitors. We've done dozens of live demonstrations for a diverse group of our members, all with insightful results, and the interest and the uptake in the Fusion has been very high. Thank you.